Oh dear Mary Jane Watson, you've had an interesting time in comic books. Mary Jane Watson has been a comic book staple for 60 years, and her character has been interesting. She's had huge character development, massive character regression, depending on what the writers and editors want. But it seems like in these last couple of years, after almost 60 years, those writers that really wanted people to hate her and didn't like her, they seem to have achieved their goals, because the fans do not seem to like her anymore. But why did writers and editors have a problem with her? Why has she been this controversial? She's just Spider-Man's girlfriend. Well, to understand that, we have to go back to the start. Back to even Ditko's run. So when Ditko started off the solo title of The Amazing Spider-Man, Mary Jane was featured in it from pretty much the start. Well, she wasn't on panel, but she was spoken about a lot. Aunt May was trying to set Peter up with her, but Peter was always trying to avoid it. He had a girlfriend, Betty Brant. But Mary Jane was built up for some time. She technically first appears in Ditko's run, but you don't see her face. It's obscured by a flower, but Liz Allen and Betty Brant highlight how pretty she is. In a later issue, you also see Peter just miss the opportunity to meet her. So Ditko built her up, but I wonder if he ever intended for her to appear officially. It felt like Mary Jane could probably turn out to be a character that everyone spoke about, but never actually turned up. A kind of mythical creature, the perfect girl for Peter Parker, but nowhere to be seen. The Stan Lee and John Romita era began, and they took over the helm, and with that she made her first full appearance in Spider-Man 42, where Peter finally reluctantly agrees to meet her at dinner. That was a whole total of 3 years after her appearance in 25. Did Romita and Lee introduce her to appease fans that had heard about this Mary Jane character for years? Or was she there to make Gwen jealous and push Peter and Gwen together as a couple? But when they finally meet, Peter is single, and he's surprised by her. He has a bit of a crush on her. He even asks her out on the following day. And they try and go on a couple of dates, but of course various villains get in the way. Gwen, very early on, is shown to be jealous, even during their first meeting. Personally, I think Gwen and Mary Jane represented two different sides of the 60s. Gwen was the ideal university-educated girl from a good family, wealthy, who stepped in line, and the typical love interest for a hero. Mary Jane, on the other hand, was a party girl, paving her own way in the world. The intention was never for her to stick around, but Mary Jane, from her first full appearance, turned out to be insanely popular, more popular than Gwen. Fans wrote in to say they wanted her to be Peter Parker's new girlfriend, but Stan Lee preferred Gwen Stacy. The writers recall trying to make Gwen more likeable, but her cold start to Peter and her idealistic personality meant that whatever they did with Gwen, the fans always preferred Mary Jane. And this was the first time Mary Jane was the victim of Marvel writers and the editorial team. They tried to make her unlikable, but all they did was make her more fun and likeable. I believe that Mary Jane had more in common with the readers, who were young people navigating a changing society, than Gwen Stacy did. They even tried at one point cutting Mary Jane's hair off to make her less popular. Gwen's appearance at the time also changes. When Romita joined as the artist after Ditko left, Romita was still drawing her in the Ditko style, which was far more classical, higher eyebrows, more understated. But after Mary Jane appeared, Gwen's appearance started to change. Even on panel, characters commented that Gwen was starting to take Mary Jane's style, but as we go on, she took her face. I guess it was a way to shift the popularity of MJ onto Gwen, making her look more modern. But then, one day, suddenly, out of nowhere, Gwen and Peter are a couple, with a kiss, not even a date. 2 issues later, Mary Jane is written out after a year and a half of appearances. But even when she was gone, she remained a fan favourite. It's clear why she was written out. It was to make way for Gwen as an uncontested love interest. She eventually returned just under 2 years later for 3 brief appearances in 1970 when Aunt May was hospitalised. By the time Mary Jane returned, Gwen had her face and they looked extremely similar. Then, the Gerry Conway era began. Conway was not even 20 when he started writing Spider-Man. And when the Conway era started, Mary Jane came back and she was better than ever. Conway clearly preferred Mary Jane to Gwen. During this era, she ends up dating Harry. The Mary Jane, Peter and Harry dynamic isn't terrible, but it was always clear that she preferred Peter. But I think Conway managed to write people in their late teens and early 20s, navigating the world, having drama, with more nuance and less clear moralising than his older counterparts. Obviously gave Mary Jane more depth. Because I think there was a generational divide. Ditko and Lee were in their 40s when they were writing. The times had changed a lot. Did they have some outdated ideas and didn't understand their readers? Conway was the reader's contemporary. Do some people see that Mary Jane clearly flirting with Peter all the time when she's in a relationship with Harry? One of the reasons he took LSD? Yes. But do I think that's a valid argument? No. But after Harry takes his LSD, Gwen Stacy dies. And then we enter the post-Gwen Stacy years. Without the death of Gwen Stacy, I do think Gwen as a love interest would be in the place of Betty Brant or Liz Allen. In the epilogue of the night that Gwen Stacy died, we see that Mary Jane has a mask that slips. I think it's clear to the audience that Mary Jane doesn't have a normal family. She mainly has an aunt similar to Peter. So when she's waiting for Peter in his apartment and he insults her, saying that she would not care if her own mother died, but her staying shows that she actually cares for the people around her. With this act, her more caring side is revealed. Conway created the opportunity for her to have the character development that earlier writers didn't want to give her. As Peter agrees, we see their relationship grow. There is a defining issue where Mary Jane witnesses a murder. Peter remarks that she has been looking after him since the death of Gwen and that it's his turn to look after her. You see how she responds to trauma in this issue. She tells Peter she witnesses a murder, but the next day she smiles it off, pretending she is joking. But Peter knows Mary Jane now, and he knows that she isn't the happy, jolly Mary Jane consistently joker. It's not real. It's a mask, much like Peter wears when he's Spider-Man. She's attacked by the Vulture, who's the person that committed the murder. Peter's reaction shows the development of the relationship. He considers killing the Vulture to save Mary Jane. They slowly enter a quasi-dating relationship. If there's a +1, they're inviting each other. Slowly something builds, but Peter isn't ready yet, but knows she's interested. Though she's interested, she expresses that she doesn't want that attachment. Their relationship continues to grow and shows her caring side. When Peter is sent abroad on an assignment with Robbie, they share their first kiss. Whatever that meant, they'll discuss it when Peter got back to New York again. But as soon as he returns, the first clone saga begins. This leaves Peter torn. Peter struggles to tell Gwen that he loves her because of Mary Jane. He knows that she should feel grateful, that they can start from where they left off, but Mary Jane is there. During this, Mary Jane does feel really hurt and rejected by Peter. Eventually we learn that Gwen was a clone. Conway's last issue finishes with 2 epilogues. One where Gwen clone walks away from Peter to shape her own life, and one where Peter and MJ finally get together. It's suggestive, and I think we can figure out what is meant in these panels. So Conway ends his run with them together. When the Conway run ends, a new writer enters the scene. Vine. Vine seems to be a fan of Mary Jane and continues the development of their relationship. You see them have fun, their relationship continue. Mary Jane does get frustrated with Peter running off and ditching her. Their relationship in this era is pretty consistent. They date, they have fun, and some real tender moments. Then Wolfman comes in. Wolfman did not like Mary Jane. He did not like how Mary Jane was written by Stan Lee and did not buy the character development laid down by Conway and Vine. So, the cycle has begun. Through Wolfman's dislike of her, he wanted to bring her back to her shallow beginnings. So they have Mary Jane reject Peter's proposal and play it off as a joke. But there was another Spider-Man title, The Spectacular Spider-Man by Mantlo, where she was shown to have remorse and that it wasn't because she was shallow, it was a hard decision to make. What I will say about Wolfman though is I think he was a Betty Brant fan, because very soon after Wolfman started writing, Mary Jane was gone. Betty Brant and Ned Leeds broken up. Betty and Peter were back. So he was really into the old school. It wasn't even Gwen. He would have done this to Gwen. He was a Betty fan. She, in her last couple of appearances, is shown to be concerned about Peter. She's worried when he goes missing, and she misses him. But then in 1980, she disappeared again. It's not a large exit, silently pushed to the side. Peter still thinks about Mary Jane and references her occasionally, missing her, but she's completely out. And then we begin the road to the wedding. Mary Jane was missed, because this was the second time she had been shifted because the writer at the time just did not like her. It took 3 years for her to return again. It was the start of a good run for Mary Jane. Roger Stern, the writer at the time, he seemed to like her. Her return harks back to her first full appearance, with her entering through the door with the words "to be continued." At this point, there was no clear indication for how long she was going to be in it for. She could have just been making a cameo appearance. With this return, Mary Jane's character development is back on track. We see that Mary Jane's chirpiness is a mask that she still misses Peter and worries for her friends. After 3.5 years for the readers, and when Betty and Ned Leeds set them up, they actually finally have a catch-up with each other. They talk about a future opportunity of them being together, but Felicia and Peter are still seeing each other at this point. This allows Mary Jane to grow without a romantic relationship. DeFalco soon takes the reins when writing Spider-Man. It's soon established that she will be staying in New York to become a series regular. We do see glimpses of Mary Jane's past and her running from it in panels, but with no full reveal yet. But they do reveal that she knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man. When Mary Jane sees an injured Peter in his apartment, she begins to grow concerned. Overhearing a fight in his apartment, Mary Jane breaks in, yet Peter has disappeared. Once he returns, Mary Jane is sat there waiting for him, and then she finally tells him what she has known for years, that he's Spider-Man, which is why she had to get away. As Mary Jane walks away from Peter, she goes home, packs a bag. We see a family photo and she breaks down crying. This was a brilliant way to add a new spin on what Wolfman had written. Mary Jane's choice to not marry him wasn't because she didn't care. She was not only just scared when he proposed, they didn't know each other. In the following issue, we get to know who Mary Jane is. Peter knew nothing about her really. We learn that her father was an abusive university lecturer who longed to be a writer, but when he was not successful, lashed out at her mum, his college sweetheart. One day, he hits her sister, who he resented because he found her ballet lessons expensive. When he did this, the mum decides to leave him, and they went around being moved to different relatives. Mary Jane's way of dealing with this was being chirpy and acting like she is having fun. This is actually a pretty good reflection how Peter uses his humour as well, a defence mechanism for when he is nervous, afraid or anxious. We learn that her family finds somewhere stable to live, but it was exploitative and abusive in its own way. Her sister, Gail, marries straight after high school and soon has a baby by the time she's 19. Her sister gets pregnant again, but this time her husband leaves her, being so young, not being able to handle a family. Whilst her sister is still pregnant and Mary Jane is still in high school, her mum gets cancer. Mary Jane ends up giving up her hobbies to pick up work to support the family. Quite soon after her mum is diagnosed with cancer, and whilst her sister is still pregnant, her mum dies. At the funeral, the sister is talking about planning their lives around each other. Angry and feeling trapped in a cycle, Mary Jane lashes out at her sister, running away. They end the issue being friends. Nothing romantic, but loving each other and finally knowing each other better than anyone else does. Since this revelation, we see Peter finally having someone to talk to. Everyone in his life knows half-truths. Mary Jane starts checking on him when he gets into fights, but acknowledges she's too afraid to get into a relationship with him because of the danger he puts himself into. At this time, it seems that the writers of all three Spider-Man titles, Spectacular, Amazing and Web, were all on the same page, pushing for character development and consistency for Mary Jane. She is shown to regret her decision not to marry Peter, and they do show that Mary Jane does want a family, but her fear is crushing. Adding the fact he's Spider-Man and may end up being consumed by the hero's life eventually. Even with this conflict within herself about their relationship, they consistently support each other, but they're clearly avoiding the inevitable. The biggest development to their relationship in this time was the first gang war arc and the intermittent Hobgoblin saga. It is shown that whilst Mary Jane likes to party, when hearing about Spider-Man getting in a brutal fight, she immediately goes to check on him, finding him beaten on the floor. The issue is, even injured, Peter still leaves, showing Mary Jane what she's clearly frightened of, that he puts himself in danger. During the gang war, Mary Jane becomes an ally and a confidant of Peter, as he takes repeated beatings. He even remarks during this that she isn't going home, that she's staying. It becomes clear that even though they're not in a relationship, their dynamic is that of two partners. Their interactions are of that of a couple. When Mary Jane finds Black Cat in the apartment, she is outraged, because they're a couple and they're both in denial of it. Mary Jane's transformation in this time is huge. The flaky Mary Jane was gone, and the MJ we saw glimpses of through the years was in full force, being a supportive friend and ally. They both date other people. The issue before Peter proposes to her, he's clearly with Felicia. But Mary Jane, after 20 years, was a full character. She had writers and editors that liked her. Now we move to the proposal and the wedding. Peter Parker is finally happy, embracing who he is as Spider-Man. But something doesn't feel right. How can he be happy but still feel hollow? He tries to function at home, not realising what a lonely life he has been living, without the torture and conflict within himself. Confused about his feelings, he goes to the one person that knows him best, Mary Jane. Mary Jane makes Peter recognise that he's been living as Spider-Man for years. Peter Parker has been neglected. What does Peter need? What does Peter want? After reflecting on his life, he goes to propose to Mary Jane as she packs her bags. It's amazing that in The Amazing Spider-Man 289, he can be seen with Felicia, but in The Amazing Spider-Man 290, is proposing to Mary Jane. So just remember that, people who hate Mary Jane. After Peter proposes, he confirms what the readers have known. They've not been friends in a long time. Mary Jane, whilst packing, goes back into her old mode of pretending nothing is wrong. This time, Peter knows her well enough to understand that this is a lie. We learn that Mary Jane is travelling to see her sister, but when she arrives, she learns that her sister is in prison. Her sister, still angry, refuses any help from her. Finally learning everything that has happened, Mary Jane reaches out to Peter to help her and get his support this time. She was letting someone into her past. Even though Peter's being hunted by the Spider Slayer, he goes to Pittsburgh to help Mary Jane. It's there where he meets Mary Jane's abusive father and learns what happened to her sister Gail. In this story, she's forced to see her father, who her mum gave up her dreams for, and Gail, who married thinking she found love but ended up being left on her own. Through this adventure, fighting the Spider Slayer and getting her father caught for his crimes and freeing her sister, the bond between them grows. Even when it looked like Mary Jane was going to help her father steal to save her sister, something Peter didn't agree with, he stood by her. At the end of the issue, Mary Jane faces what has dominated her life for years: fear. She knows that she's been running away from responsibilities, but also giving up who she is and what she wants. In the end, she accepts Peter's proposal. In the wedding issue, we see them getting ready for marriage. You see that they're both nervous about getting married and realising what a huge commitment it is. In the issue, an ex of Mary Jane's called Bruce tries to win her back. He even picks her up outside Aunt May's house in front of Peter, and they go for a drive. It's clear to see that she has cold feet, not from lack of love, but she has so many questions. Is she hurting her career? Will he leave her to be Spider-Man? She has the perfect way out, this rich guy who will take her on holiday. But it would be easy for Mary Jane to run away again, like she did before. Running away from responsibility, running away from the possibility of getting hurt, chasing the good time, and who could blame her? Yet she doesn't run. The reality is, unlike her mum and Gail, she would be marrying Peter to make herself happy. She even manages to get Bruce to give her a free honeymoon. I think is great. Peter does almost break up with her until she pulls out a photo of her wedding dress to show him. As well, Flash Thompson does give him a reality check. And then they get married. And it's wonderful. Everyone loves it. Peter and Mary Jane get character development. Peter learns to focus on his life as Peter and not just as Spider-Man during this. During the honeymoon, we see Peter plagued with worries that he cannot afford or support Mary Jane. Thoughts that never cross her mind. And if they do, it's just because she's worried that Peter's worrying about it too much. She has chosen to walk her own path, not one expected of her. A path that will make her happy, and what makes her happy is Peter. We see in this Mary Jane has long progressed from the fickle party girl. People don't believe that she could possibly want to get married. The model she had worked with called it the kiss of death. The era was balancing the fact that Mary Jane can still have a fun and outgoing personality, which we saw right back at the start, but also allow her to have more depth. There were many writers working on Spider-Man at the time, yet the story stayed consistent. DeFalco's original idea was that Mary Jane would leave him at the altar. The wedding and marriage was said to have been saved by fan enthusiasm at a convention panel, but due to the fan enthusiasm, they had a publicity push for the wedding. The publicity push was so hard that at the O'Shea Stadium, they had a mock Peter Parker and Mary Jane wedding with Stan Lee officiating. By the time DeFalco became editor-in-chief, the stadium was hired and an actual fashion designer had designed Mary Jane's dress. But DeFalco was eventually won over, initially thinking it was a mistake. Fans really had a near miss with that. And imagine Marvel actually teasing something and seeing positive fan reaction and doing it. I mean, you don't see that very often. DeFalco went on to say this about the marriage. I thought it was a big mistake. And at some point I ended up writing Spider-Man again, and I realised if it was treated like a real marriage, and we think of Mary Jane as someone who is married to a cop or serviceman, all this does is add extra responsibility on Peter's back. And to me, Spider-Man has always been about Peter's responsibility. Creating responsibilities for Peter is a good thing. Now we go into the early marriage years. And the first set of runs after their marriage is really good. You had Craven's Last Hunt. I find it an amazing set of issues. Because this time Peter had someone waiting for him at home when he was being buried alive. He had Mary Jane on the street searching for him. The crushing moment where someone dressed as Spider-Man comes out and she realises it's not Peter is impactful. There was not only tension whether he'll survive or not, but whether that early in their marriage, can they survive this? What danger will Mary Jane put herself in trying to find him? It was emotional. It was heartbreaking. It made a better story. Before this, he had friends and Aunt May, but this was different. Then you have the Sin Eater arc too. It also follows Mary Jane's story, her goals and aims. It gave the issues diversity. It wasn't just cuts of Peter's miserable money worries. It was with successes of Mary Jane. It is nice to see your hero have wins, whether that be through their wives or themselves. Mary Jane talks about what marriage actually means to her in a set of panels and how positive the experience has been. It's so bizarre. For the longest time, I couldn't imagine what being married would be like. Now I can't imagine my life with Peter not in the picture. I thought I'd feel trapped, but instead having someone to love me for myself, it's freed me. Even after the last hunt, she doesn't run away or move to another city. She still chooses her husband. She was slowly becoming the main breadwinner in the family. This was something Peter struggled with occasionally, but she never cared. They struggled financially, but it never caused actual strain on the relationship. With Peter and Mary Jane as a couple, there were some funny panels and just romance in the comics, which in my opinion, most people like and enjoy. Mary Jane still enjoyed going out and having a party like she did before. They just shared it together. When Venom breaks into their apartment and threatens Mary Jane, Peter remarks that she was so terrified that he couldn't do his normal reaction of going off web slinging. He had to stay with her. Mary Jane was impacting the way that Peter behaved, changing his usual habits. She is left so traumatized by the attack by Venom, she says she cannot live in the same apartment, and she asks Peter to not wear the black costume. With that, he returns to his traditional red and blue one. We see massive Mary Jane character development when Peter is offered an amazing work opportunity in Kansas. It does cause conflict between the two. Her career is picking up and she has opportunities that she's never had before. This was a particular fear she held because of her mum and sister giving up what they wanted to do. She does decide to move to Kansas with Peter for his dream job because she trusts him. But Peter decides her dreams and life are just as important as his, so he goes to get an advanced degree instead. We are then hit with another clone saga, with a return of Gwen Stacy. You see the continuation of Peter's confusion over his feelings. Mary Jane states her feelings of the Gwen Stacy versus her dynamic. Mary Jane says that she never stood a chance when Gwen was alive with Peter because Gwen was smart, educated and a lady. But Mary Jane was a cheap date. Gwen Stacy was the beauty queen and Mary Jane was the pin-up girl. I do believe this is a good observation of what the early writers thought of her, why they were so against her being in a relationship with the hero. The story does perfectly demonstrate that Gwen could never have handled Peter being Spider-Man. In the end, the writer finally put the Gwen versus Mary Jane debate to an end. Peter tells Mary Jane that he does love Gwen, but it's not the same way that he loves her, and he loves her even more than he ever loved Gwen, and that probably wouldn't have changed even if she was alive. This will not surprise many people, but this run of Spectacular Spider-Man, which covers some great Peter and Mary Jane moments, was written by Jerry Conway. After this, the Jonathan Caesar arc begins, one where Mary Jane is front and centre. He is a stalker of Mary Jane, a very rich and powerful stalker. It's pretty realistic. He owns the building they live in, so he lets himself into their apartment and kidnaps her. Caesar, learning that Spider-Man is looking for her, sends some villains to distract him. Mary Jane in this situation fights her way out, literally lamping Caesar and electrocuting his bodyguards. She then steals a pew pew from the bodyguards and goes to Central Park to help Peter. This is one of the seminal stories that starts the Mary Jane fighter character trait. Caesar and what happened to Mary Jane isn't just a one-time plot point. The impact from this consumes part of their life. Adding new stories to tell from a different perspective, it became something she needs to deal with herself. Her job options are limited due to his power. Even when they move and he's in prison, he has stuff delivered to their apartment to show that he has power over her. She doesn't allow Peter to handle him, preferring to do it herself. Eventually, when he is released, she decides not to pursue him. She doesn't want to take him to court. She doesn't want him leering at her in the courtroom. This is quite powerful because this is the case with a lot of assault victims and why a lot of them don't go to court. He does die eventually after another stalker kills him. And yeah, Mary Jane is stalked a bit, quite a bit. Then we have the hard years for Mary Jane. My gosh, she does not get a break in the 90s. During this era, there is one disaster after another. What she thought she could handle becomes unbearable. It's so bad that she begins smoking, but they do fit in some after-school special lessons about smoking and how it kills. And the problems really start when Harry becomes the Green Goblin. You see Harry slowly slips into madness when MJ and Peter are living in their building. Even though things start well and they're babysitting Normie and they're hanging out with their best friends, things go wrong. We know that Harry is unlike his father, but the fear that he will try and reenact what his father did to Gwen Stacy to MJ is a worry. And Mary Jane puts herself out there and challenges Harry about what's going on. When she does, Harry says he'll never kill her. She tries to act as an emissary between Peter and Harry, but they're both stubborn and Harry slips further and further. This arc ends eventually with her convincing Harry to go back and save Peter before he dies in an explosion. Just after Harry saves Peter, the Green Goblin formula ends up killing him. The marriage starts to get harder for Mary Jane at this point. Peter's parents are found alive in a well after being in a Russian prison camp for 20 years. Peter struggles with this, but she's still trying to make it work, trying to be supportive. But every time she needs someone, he swings off, leaving her lonely. At the same time this is happening, her part in the soap opera is being slowly cut back. She's slowly losing the strength she had in the early days of marriage, but it does seem like one disaster to the next, with Mary Jane bearing the brunt of it a lot of the time, having to suffer in silence. With the return of Peter's parents, she also has doubts that she won't be accepted, that she won't be good enough, that she'll lose part of Peter, them rejecting her because she's thought of as the pin-up girl. Eventually it is revealed that Peter's parents haven't come back and it was a ploy by the Chameleon to use Peter to find out the identity of Spider-Man. When Peter tells his parents he's Spider-Man, mission accomplished. They disappear. Peter strives for revenge, whilst Mary Jane again is left wondering where he is and what he's doing. Eventually, with the stress of it all, Aunt May has a stroke. When Peter finds out, he doesn't speak to Mary Jane. He cocoons himself up on the ceiling with grief. By the time that Mary Jane comes to check on him, a few hours later, he's left without saying anything to her. Peter goes into just being Spider-Man. He isn't visiting Aunt May in the hospital. He's just fighting an absolutely insane Carnage and Shriek. During this time, Mary Jane is completely alone, but she cannot push the pain away anymore like she used to with partying. Now she recognises Peter's doing the same, hiding behind a mask and pushing all the pain down. She then decides to go visit her family, to see her dad and sister, to not run away from them. And when she's on the plane, she is sick. She does go home to her family, making amends and trying to move forward, even handling the relationship with her father, which, if you ask me, she doesn't have to do. But I guess after witnessing what happened with Peter's fake parents, it makes sense. Once she makes her way back to New York, she reveals that she's pregnant. Oh, poor Mary Jane, your problems are just beginning. The joy, it won't last long. Aunt May is still in a coma, but Peter is happy. She has the pregnant experience from hell. From the start, the irradiated blood of Peter is a worry, but the clone saga then begins. And again, she has the worst possible experience. This is a quick summary of what happens because so much happens to her. They find out the baby is fine. Great. But it is then revealed that Peter is a clone and Ben Reilly is the real Peter Parker. Peter struggles with this, accidentally hits her while she's pregnant. And as he continues to struggle with this, a lot of fights ensue because he's Spider-Man and Mary Jane is left crumbling to pieces. Then Aunt May dies, leaving Peter completely heartbroken. But as soon as she is buried, at the funeral, Peter is arrested for a murder in Utah. Kane looks like he's hunting her, and in an alleyway, she comes across another Peter clone which tries to attack her. Ben Reilly then turns up at her house with her husband's face whilst Peter's in prison. She's very confused and bewildered and just reacted to this emotionally. Peter is able to switch places with Ben Reilly, so she has Peter back, but they can't go out and be normal. She still has to pretend that her husband's in prison. She's also put on the witness stand whilst 7 months pregnant, trying to explain all of her husband's random disappearances, but she cannot just say where he is. They ask her about the time when Peter was being buried by Craven the Hunter, but all she can say is, "Oh, I don't know." And she's there pregnant, put on, being grilled on a witness stand. Eventually, Peter gets acquitted, but there is another Peter clone who goes crazy and tries to attack her, but she survives. The clone saga is a mess. I hate it. But does poor MJ get psychologically broken? Yes. And then to top it all off, the cherry on the clone saga torture for Mary Jane cake, Peter gets possessed by like this poison thing and tries to murder her. Like really tries to murder her, and Ben has to stop him. But she loves and trusts him so much that even when she thinks he's a clone and that he may have been programmed to kill her by Jackal, she still tries to move forward with him. Eventually, with Mary Jane so pregnant and so traumatized, they make a decision to move to Portland. Peter gets a new job and Mary Jane is modelling maternity wear. Ben Reilly is now Spider-Man and New York is looked after. Then Peter picks up the mask again, causing great distress to Mary Jane, who again considers leaving. He can no longer pick up the mask and fight crime, especially after everything they went through. He chooses to get rid of his powers, and he then gets a job offer from the Bugle, and they decide to move back to New York permanently. At this point, they believe Peter's a clone, and for a few issues, it looks like Peter's going to die. And she's still pregnant at this point. She's just waiting for her husband to die while she's about 8 months pregnant. Luckily, it was just his powers coming back, because he cannot be rid of them. And whilst he has powers, slipping into Spider-Man is easy, and he'll always have a target on his back. Just after being hired by the Bugle, which brought him back from Portland, he is made redundant. Then goddamn Norman Osborn has to enter the picture. Whilst Mary Jane is out with her aunt, some woman puts powder in her food. The powder / poison starts labour. Now Mary Jane is 9 months pregnant, so it was any day now. But she ends up in hospital without Peter. But Peter knows that Norman has done something to Mary Jane, and a fight begins. During the fight with Norman, Ben saves Peter, and it is revealed that Ben was the clone. The baby appears to have died, but the same woman was seen delivering a package to Norman which looks like a baby. Poor Mary Jane. What has she gone through in these last 9 months? But do the writers dwell on it much? Not really. We see them deal with it in a few issues, a few references and a therapy session, but they move on. I guess everyone deals with these issues differently. But where do they end up after all of this? They both decide to go back to university. Oh yeah, they kill off the baby and have MJ complete her undergrad and Peter do his postgraduate study. It seems almost to be a reboot of the series, pulling Mary Jane and Peter back from the forward trajectory that they were on. So One More Day wasn't really the first attempt to kind of reset things. During this time, MJ is going to toga parties and making friends. One in particular friend she made is Jill Stacy, Gwen Stacy's cousin. Yeah, you know where this is going. Mary Jane eventually decides to leave university and continue her modelling career. A particularly sad phone call happens when an agent asks her how her baby is doing, which is heartbreaking. During this time, Norman is again being Norman Osborn, and they are led to believe that Aunt May and Baby May are still alive. Mary Jane tries to talk Peter out of even trying to go and sort things out because she cannot hope anymore, but Peter continues. Oh, and luckily May is alive, but it's Aunt May. Can someone please let her die? This isn't the May we wanted. I imagine this was some form of editorial decision. I'm sure Baby May was supposed to be the one who is found. Peter and Mary Jane progression killed by Editorial. But don't worry, if you miss Baby May, you can read about her in our new AU comic book series, Spider-Girl. When this arc was completed, we entered volume 2 of Spider-Man. After 36 years, it was time to start a new stage, which didn't feel like a new stage, but more like a reboot. The road to One More Day. Peter was back at university and Mary Jane was modelling. Of course, they were still married, they were facing some trials and tribulations, but for once it wasn't financial. They were figuring things out. But Mary Jane was still lonely and frightened. She had no one to talk to, arguing that even if he died, she may not know for ages. He can go on some adventure somewhere or be dead in a ditch with her never knowing. It regularly came up between them that they were missing each other. With Mary Jane travelling and Peter as Spider-Man, they didn't see much of each other. But there was a voice of reason, a friend of both of them, and that was Jill Stacy, Gwen's cousin, who apparently, if she didn't have black hair, would look like Gwen's twin. And yes, I'm sure you can see the trouble ahead with this situation. Mary Jane is stalked again, but they're also a mad bomber, and when the police are interviewing her, she has to go on her own. The stalker is making threats to Peter, but she has been hiding it for some time. They ask her about Spider-Man's involvement, and she has to bat it back that he cannot negatively be involved, but not specify that he's her husband. They also ask her about Peter, and even the police point out that he's left her on her own to go through this. And when they ask her where he is, all she can say is she doesn't know. Her loneliness grows throughout this time as they continue to miss each other. Then as she's flying to her next job, she is offered a lollipop. This is a sign of the bomber, and with that, the plane she's on is blown up. When her death is announced, Peter doesn't know for hours, web slinging and all, and Aunt May has to tell him, and most people already know at that point. Peter refuses to believe that she is dead, and there is no suggestion that she may have lived, more framed as him being in denial. I believe they did another let's write out MJ because they're not fans. It was clear they were introducing Jill Stacy as another love interest. I think they would have brought Gwen back from the grave if they could, but settled on her identical cousin. She does come on quite strong and express her interest in Peter. They are even set up by Randy in a massively misjudged double date. Imagine being Mary Jane and you're dead for a couple of months after losing your baby, and your husband's friend is setting him up with his ex's cousin who looks exactly like her, the ex that always made you feel insecure. She does not deserve this slander. Jill pursued Peter whilst he was still grieving for Mary Jane. It was kind of a mirror of what happened with when Gwen died in the 70s, but it's not natural. She's been forced in. Peter is adamant Mary Jane is alive, and I guess to them he seems like he's holding on to false hope. From what I gathered, fans were not happy with this. Maybe the fans saw the trend of let's write out Mary Jane for a year or two. After a year, they decided to reveal that she was actually being held prisoner. I believe Mary Jane was meant to be killed off in this crash, but I'm guessing fan reception to Jill Stacy wasn't great because you don't see her again. One of the reasons I believe that she was supposed to be killed off is because they try and make her surviving make sense, but it makes no sense. But at least Mary Jane was back. They actually do break up soon after this because Peter ends up running off pretty soon after they're reunited. Mary Jane decides that she cannot do it anymore. She ends up moving to LA away from Peter. There is a quite powerful and impactful issue of Spider-Man where there is no dialogue, no thought bubbles, just pictures. In this, you see, even though she's living in LA, she's pretty miserable. She's trying to figure out her life, but she still loves and misses Peter. She's lonely. She still watches Spider-Man news reports and clearly misses him. In the end, you see a mirror of that, where Peter sees Mary Jane on a screen, on an advert. When they have the chance to meet up again, Peter's on an astral plane, trying to save children, but he misses her. Obviously, as a result of this, Mary Jane is annoyed and hurt by his failure to turn up. Peter then goes to fly out to LA, where he meets her on a set of a film called The Amazing Lobster Man, whereas she essentially pays herself. The co-star pretty much outlines why he thinks someone would go out with a superhero. He says it's someone who has lousy self-image and no respect, because she's the only in his life when it is convenient, and when something happens, she has no one to talk to, which kind of outlines her worst fears of what happened to her. The Mary Jane, written by Straczynski, is very strong and a well-developed character. But remember, Peter has strayed from the path when he was in the astral plane, leading to a figure following him called Shafara. The astral creature knows his identity and decides to go after him in another way by taking human form and going to the press. Whilst doing a press tour, she claims that she's been having an affair with Spider-Man and confirms that she knows that he's married. When Peter calls Mary Jane, she just asks him to tell her it's not true. She begs him to say it's not true. Obviously it isn't, and when it is revealed to not be true, Mary Jane decides to fly out to New York to see Peter. But Peter has been abroad and decides to divert the flight he is taking to New York, to LA instead, to try and meet up with her. They both miss each other. That damn Parker luck, hey? Luckily, their flights are diverted to the same airport when they are coming back from failing to see each other. They decide to talk, but lo and behold, Dr. Von Doom appears and Peter has to step in. Mary Jane lays out all of her issues, highlighting the claim that Peter was having an affair with Spider-Man revealed her great fear. She never really knows what he's doing. He could be with someone else. She even shares that she feels completely separate from Peter's superhero life. Like, he has these friends, these people he goes on adventures with, but they have no idea who she is. She feels like another woman and a secret part of his life. That when he is Spider-Man, he cannot even look at her or turn his head in her direction. It's lonely. And Straczynski wrote about this relationship well. He gave them a tangible reason for breaking up, that MJ didn't feel he needed her, that she felt so far out of his life and she could never be part of his life because she didn't fit in it. Obviously, Peter tells her that this isn't true and that he does all these things because she believes in him. Now Mary Jane gets to be back in the main title. You see the positive impact she has on him. Over time, their relationship builds again really well. You can see the difference in their relationship dynamic through the whole run. It's much more like the earlier days before the Clone Saga and Peter's parents coming back. They have breakfast together. He's clearly more present. Decides to go for roles off Broadway, and as she is trying to get into the acting game in New York, the relationship just gets better. Mary Jane on stage talks about how happy she is in her marriage. Peter is waiting outside in the waiting room for her audition. It's a really good read. They both as characters seem to be on an upward trajectory. It's definitely more enjoyable to read than those arcs of pure bleakness. I know Sin's Past happened during this time, but let's be honest, it's been removed from canon and MJ keeping it a secret. It's a difficult one. Gwen was dead. Did she need to tell Peter? And it's been retconned and nobody really paid attention to it when it came out. They eventually move into the Avengers Tower as Peter becomes a full-time Avenger. He is still keeping his identity secret, but they seem stronger than ever. Now, as much as this was a fun romp and great to see them not struggle with the normal things, Peter as a full-time Avenger couldn't have stayed, even though she enjoyed it, her career was doing well. Civil War in one more day. Now here comes the bad times. Peter reveals his identity, exposing Mary Jane and Aunt May to the danger of all of his enemies. It was a bad idea, and even the concept of it was dumb. Peter and them should have been fine in the Avengers Tower as long as he towed the Stark-led line. Then he realises what was being done under the Superhuman Registration Act, and he realises it is wrong, especially locking up superpowered people who refuse to be registered in a negative zone. This results in him deciding to fight against it. But obviously fighting against it means they're kicked out of the Avengers Tower, so they're hiding out in motels, leaving them exposed to danger. Eventually, when Peter returns, a hitman hired by Kingpin tries to shoot at him. He manages to save Mary Jane, but Aunt May is also shot in the crossfire. This obviously leaves them devastated, but they're also fugitives. So when she goes into the hospital, they have to give fake names. They cannot afford the best healthcare, and essentially it is chaos, moving around and hiding. Mary Jane is there the whole time trying to manage the fallout as Peter fights. Eventually Aunt May dies and they decide to make a deal with Mephisto, who only wants their marriage for Aunt May's life. Mary Jane even says it may have been her time, but she seems to be the one to make the decision to do it. It's very clear, in my opinion, that Straczynski didn't want to write this and even outlined how stupid he thought it would be. The marriage is traded and Mary Jane is sure that they will get back together, and that not even Mephisto can keep them apart. Now, I believe the marriage was written out for a couple of reasons. The editors and the writers there at the time didn't like Mary Jane, and they had the same sentiments as Lee and Wolfman, but also Raimi. Yes, I think the Spider-Man film portrayals of Mary Jane were so negative that they worried that when new readers and young people pick up the comic and they see him married to this woman who cheats on him, they're not going to want to read it. So they just decided to write Mary Jane out. It's easier to get new readers if they don't have to see him married to this woman. At the time, it was much harder to have access to classic comics. We had no Marvel Unlimited, illegal scans were around but not very common, so new readers only had the current comic and the films as their base for knowledge. I can see why this made sense to Marvel. Also, having all these new young readers, did they actually want to see a married Spider-Man, especially to that witch Mary Jane, who cheats on him and is fickle? No. The brand new day era. So the pattern since the 60s, which is to break Peter and Mary Jane up and write her out of the books and give him a whole new set of love interests, has returned. Young boys reading the book can now see their favourite superhero be swooned over by the ladies rather than in a marriage, even though that marriage was to a supermodel. When she returns, eventually, it's one of the funniest scenes, and I mean ridiculous. Multiple girls are fighting over Peter in an apartment, and when she walks in, they bemoan that the supermodel has walked in. Eventually, we find out why they're no longer talking, and also what has replaced the last 20 years of comics that people have been reading. But it turns out it's essentially the same, except they don't get married. In a heart-wrenching scene, she is seen waiting for Peter on the sofa, crying in her wedding dress because he didn't turn up. But they don't break up then. Most of it stays the same. They just don't get married and don't have a kid. So she was never pregnant during the Clone Saga, in her memory. I guess they didn't want to tell loyal readers that everything they read for 20 years didn't happen. So what broke them up if everything happened the same? That Peter didn't erase her memories that he was Spider-Man, that she wanted to forget it all, which I think is a poor reason to break up. One, if he ever tells the truth, people get their memories back, like Felicia did in the Fantastic Four. And I think Mary Jane would have preferred to know the truth. I don't think she would have wanted to be in a relationship with somebody under the guise of a lie. So I just find it a really bad reason to break them up. It doesn't make sense. Peter starts going out over time with Carly Cooper, and Mary Jane dates some people. It doesn't really last long. In around 2015, 2016, around 8 to 9 years after One More Day, Mary Jane and Peter go back to what they were doing just before they got engaged, being a couple in everything but name. They spend large amount of time together. She becomes his confidant. The relationship continues to develop, and eventually they admit they're dating. And they're on the right track. Peter has a good job at Horizon Labs, which gives him flexible working hours, a regular paycheck, even purchasing an apartment. He seems to be managing his life well, and Mary Jane with her nightclub seems to be doing well. Could this be them on a new path? Could Mary Jane be allowed to shine, have her own successful business, not have to worry about money all the time, and continue to support Peter? No, she cannot. Peter around this time is body swap with Doc Ock. Doc Ock initially tries to date Mary Jane, but eventually tells her it's over, as it always ends the same with them. They'll always break up and they'll always find their way to each other. More likely, one writer and editorial team will want them back together and another one will want them separate. But still, they break up again. Eventually, Peter gets his body back and he explains it all. And she says that they are stuck in a cycle. If she doesn't end it now, they never will. This gives Peter the chance to date some more ladies. And this time, he's a billionaire running Parker Industries. This break gives MJ a chance to do something different. Her club is destroyed by Tony Stark and Madame Mask. She cannot build up a nightclub again. The insurance excess will be too much. This is when Tony Stark approaches her to become his new executive assistant. And it's a pretty decent run. She is seen by Stark to always be near superhero shenanigans. Stark at this point has had his memories erased, so he cannot remember Peter's identity. It was a good arc. It was nice for her not to be a love interest. She showed resilience and intelligence during Tony Stark going missing and seeming to have died. She played the counselor role to many people during this time. It was good for her to do something for herself. I think this did her a lot of justice. It was nice to see that there was no Peter and definitely no Stark relationship. Around the same time, Parker Industries collapses and Peter and MJ are back to the same old not dating. They almost get together, but she sees his Spider-Man suit and pulls away. They remain friends, but the cycle returns. Then the Kindred saga begins. This starts off with Peter professing his love and desire to be with Mary Jane. They get back together because let's not fight the inevitable here. It was always going to happen. She knew it and he knew it. So they're a couple. Peter is penniless, but there has been forward momentum with their relationship, which is just in time for the Kindred saga to begin. Quite early in the run, Mary Jane ends up getting an exciting role. This begins the solo title, The Amazing Mary Jane. When Mary Jane gets to filming this role, she soon learns that she's been misled. The director is actually Mysterio, who is making a film to portray villains in a sympathetic light, which he isn't apologetic for. When she finds out, she decides to stay. It's quite funny because Spider-Man and the rest of the heroes are villains. She isn't fully honest with Peter because she doesn't tell him that the director has been replaced with Mysterio. In this run, she becomes a financial advisor to Mysterio, supporting him make decisions and kind of managing him so he doesn't go into supervillain mode. It's a fun romp, initially only planned for 5 issues, which follows the filming of her new film. It seems to have been extended as issue 6 was published, called Part 1 of a New Adventure. It ends with her witnessing a murder and being shipped to Montana. Then it ends. They even had a preview for the cover for the next issue. It seems like COVID-19 was the cause of this cancellation. So that's a shame, but we did see her being more of her own character and her own title before being shipped back to the main title. At this point, I think we know the MJ they're portraying pretty well. Peter's soulmate, independent with her own dreams, but can be weighed down by the realities of being the partner of a superhero. With this, she returned to the main part of the Kindred saga. In this, Mary Jane is central in trying to talk Harry down from killing Peter and trying to put things on the right path. During this whole time, we're being misled to believe that one more day is being reversed. Central to this whole arc is the dynamic between the old gang of friends. It shows that they had so much hope and they were excited for the future, but the years have worn them down, that their dreams have been killed. It also seems that Harry is still a bit butthurt over the fact that Mary Jane always had feelings for Peter when she was going out with Harry. But as Peter clearly states, they were children then. The problem I have with the Kindred saga, it was clear that one more day was supposed to be reversed, but they ended up reversing sins past instead, which meant there was no forward movement on the growth and dynamic of Mary Jane. How would she feel learning that she traded her marriage? Would she be angry at Peter herself? Would it bring them closer together? Would she be hurt that she forgot her own pregnancy? That she forgot her own baby? Would Harry reveal what Norman did to the baby? At the end of this run, after 3 years of consistent misleading, the final issue of this saga ended with a letter from Nick Lowe. And it says something that I think is one of the biggest issues facing Spider-Man and Mary Jane as a character as a whole. The letter starts with, "Hey there, webheads. Thus ends the Kindred saga. 3 years later, we end where we began, with the best couple in comics being great and being there for each other." Isn't that nice? Gives me so much hope for the future. Now we got onto the Paul problem. I guess even with the disappointment of the Kindred saga, at least Peter and Mary Jane were back together, and Mary Jane wasn't being trashed or written out. That was a good start. But in 2022, the Zeb Wells run began. I can cry. It starts not great for Peter. In the first issue, we see Mary Jane asking Peter to never call her again. He is heartbroken and Mary Jane comes across as this cold, cruel person. Remember, the last time we saw them, they were strong. Only 6 months have passed. This was really out of character for Mary Jane. She was cold, cruel, and yeah, it was just sad. And then to top it all off, MJ's front door is opened and 2 children calling her mummy enter the room with a man named Paul. She now has a happy family. Mary Jane has moved on very quickly and we're not sure how. With whatever she has done before, even when Wolfman had a laugh at Peter's proposal, this was the cruelest she has ever been. Peter has an extremely hard time in this run and he even goes missing. Felicia as a friend asks Mary Jane if she has seen Peter because she's worried, and Mary Jane acts so uninterested. She doesn't want him in her life and she wants him away permanently. She then goes to tuck this mysterious child to bed. At no point in Mary Jane's history has she ever behaved like this before. Even when Peter didn't turn up at their wedding in the alternate reality, she didn't act like this. She's even cold and cruel to him at the Hellfire Gala because she was a pharmaceutical rep for Krakoa, because my gosh, they won't let Mary Jane have a consistent career. Even at the Hellfire Gala, as Peter begs her for a good reason for them not to be together and for her to choose this random guy, all she responds with is responsibility. Is it for the kids? Is that it? Is this why you need this guy around? And even when they bump into each other at a spa weekend, she accuses him of stalking her. He admits to having done so. But I mean, he must be really confused. In 6 months, they go from having a very strong relationship to her being in one with another man and having 2 children. And now that she has that, she wants him to leave her alone forever. She has no interest in him. I don't know, it's weird. It takes a year to find out about how Mary Jane and Peter broke up. We find out that Peter and Mary Jane start as a happy couple about to move in together. They are then unruly attacked by Rabin, who appeared 10 years before and tried to sacrifice Carly Cooper at one point. He wants revenge on Peter and still needs the human sacrifice he sought before. He ended up marking not just Peter but also Mary Jane for death. This mark transports him to another universe. In this alternate universe / reality, the world has been destroyed by Rabin and they spend time fighting off monsters. It's during this they came across Paul, the man Mary Jane is now with. Now, Rabin never specified who he intended to sacrifice. He mentioned he needed a sacrifice and to have his vengeance on Peter. As they believe Rabin intends to sacrifice Peter, he develops a device to send MJ home to get help. But as Rabin attacks, Mary Jane decides to push Peter through the portal to prevent him from being sacrificed and stay in the alternate world, which is ravaged by war and death. Peter ends up away from home and Mary Jane is stuck. And during this time, Mary Jane experiences 4 years, or what they now say felt like 4 years. They eventually end up travelling around the ruined world together because I guess he's the only other person. Then Rabin attacks again, and he says he will come back when Mary Jane has accepted her bindings. But if you read the issue where he tries to sacrifice Carly Cooper, he said he needs a female sacrifice. So I wonder who the sacrifice is going to be. Anyhow, as they travel this desolate wasteland, she finds 2 children. The children are alone and scared, hiding from the Scribble Man. She decides to look after them and raise them with Paul. Over time, somehow, her and Paul develop a relationship. Don't see how. I mean, there's nothing to suggest that she likes him. He just tells her repeatedly that Peter is never coming back. It is probably the family unit she grows attached to. By the time Peter returns, he tries to kiss her, but she rejects him. Seeing Paul come out with 2 children while she coldly tells Peter that this is her new family. She then leaves Peter heartbroken whilst they're in a hospital waiting room. And my gosh, this is so out of character of her. Her and Peter have been separated many times by many different ways, but no one has ever really come between them. Even Gwen without death had a time limit. They have been on and off again for over 50 years by this issue. And this is how they're characterising her? Just breaking his heart with no care? Okay, sure. Eventually it was revealed that Mary Jane was a sacrifice and she had accepted her bindings, the children. Once she accepted them, they were zapped out of existence by Rabin. Paul has to watch as the children disappear in front of him. Eventually Rabin is defeated. It looks like Mary Jane has been killed, but it was Miss Marvel who shape-shifted. Somehow she remained with Paul. They have a panel of them mourning the children, but that is it. One thing that does stand out about Paul and Mary Jane is that they never show affection on panel. They never kiss. I don't think they've even hugged. Probably because they didn't want to break the fan base. Now, this probably has been the most damaging change made to Mary Jane in the last 60 years. Even when she was a fickle party girl, she still cared for Peter. Let's be honest, she's been obsessed with him since day one. Even when broken up, she looked after him. No matter what happened, they found their way to each other. They were inevitable. It's why Mephisto wanted their marriage so much. This portrayal of Mary Jane seems like it was written by somebody who has a deep mistrust of women. Someone who feels deeply betrayed by women. I know this sounds odd, but Peter steals from the Fantastic Four, fights Captain America to get Mary Jane back as soon as possible, and is still left heartbroken. It feels very, you will do everything for a woman. and she'll stump you for somebody else. A kind of message that women are fickle in a very podcast bro mindset. I'm going to say it. I don't think Zeb Wells likes women. Yet there is an aspect that even though people are hate piling on her may mean something if it's addressed in the future. Paul was terrible to her. He gaslit her every day, telling her Peter was never coming back. And as time went on, she lost hope. She kept losing hope, and because of that, she was vulnerable enough to be with him. The children became another tether to a man she didn't want to be tethered to. Mary Jane has always wanted children. Remember, somewhere in Mary Jane's mind, she knows she's missing something. The child Mephisto said that she'll never have now. Not only is she missing that child, she's missing the baby that was removed from her memory. I think part of her knows that the life she is living isn't the life that was meant for her. The little girl looked like her. The kids looked like they could have been kids she had with Peter, similar to what she imagined. They were created to bind her. I also believe Paul knew this. I think he knew they weren't real. Or deep down he knew. His dad was Rabin. He helped kill most of the planet, and he didn't know that his father would do this. Soon after this, Mary Jane became Jackpot, a superhero. I think this is part of their, look, we don't hate Mary Jane, we made her strong. That makes up for all the treatment we have given her. Of course it doesn't. Oh, and now she's Venom. I mean, at least she breaks up with Paul, but she's now bound to Venom because of some Paul science magic mix-up. I guess at least we have a Mary Jane-centered book where she might get some development in, but I don't think good development for Mary Jane is making her some form of superhero. Of course, it looks like she's trying to get back with Peter whilst he's in space, and Ben is pretending to be him, and Norman is Spider-Man. I guess we'll see what happens in the future with that. My final thoughts. It feels like we've come full circle. Mary Jane is the tramp again. And oh yes, she has been described as a tramp. Again, the traditional woman is in, and Mary Jane is pushing the boundaries that writers and editors don't like. Gwen Stacy is looked favourably upon now, as she had no discernible personality traits. She has no past. Peter was her only love interest. That would suggest, though, people have read the Lee and Romita era. Whereas Mary Jane, she has a past. She's dated other people. People, some young men, are thinking like middle-aged men did in the 60s. Mary Jane was always supposed to be the girl that everyone was confused the superhero wanted to be with. The cheap date, loud and audacious, which I don't think she ever was. Gwen was the opposite of that. A nice, good girl. She may have teamed up with some dodgy characters who turned out to be white supremacists, but a good girl and a dutiful daughter. With that, you'd think should be interesting, but she was there with a lack of personality. She was just the good girl. Yet maybe that is what they want, a blank slate, someone who doesn't say much, doesn't give much of a personality. I don't think enough people knew what Sin's past was to use that against her. Many of these comic book people are actually comic book readers. Seeing what Comics Explained posted as I recorded this shows that even those who explain comic books don't read comic books, because what do you mean Tony Stark and Mary Jane were a thing? He was her boss and he made it clear he was in love with someone else. Most of the time she worked at Stark Industries, he was thought to be dead twice. He died twice when she was at Stark Industries. Do these people not understand professional dynamics? Or do they not read the comic books properly, paying half attention, then slapping a video together? I know there are Felicia fans out there. Felicia isn't the wife, she's the girlfriend. I'm sure fan reaction would not be great if Peter was to marry Felicia. Felicia, again, has a past. I feel like she's the fantasy. And before people come at me, I have seen the Black Cat subreddit, and I have seen what Black Cat fans post in the main Spider-Man subreddit. Don't lie to me. People like to talk about her and Peter and bringing them back to being in a relationship again. Yeah, only a few years ago she was hated when she went on the Kingpin path and she betrayed Peter. I think this is a symptom of the time. I was not very surprised to learn that Zeb Wells was going through a divorce at this time. It read very much like a man going through a divorce. And I know they're saying it's because they want to see young people reading Spider-Man, but Spider-Man was never more popular than when he was married. Seeing Peter just suffer as Spider-Man isn't a good message for young people, yet they think that's what new readers want and will get them hooked. It's no coincidence that the Zeb Wells run is the one they added to Webtoon to get new readers. But what is actually popular in Webtoon? Wayne Family Adventures and Lore Olympus. Romance and family vibes. Peter and Mary Jane happily married while Peter fights crime as a superhero would probably do very well on Webtoon. In a world full of toxicity, isn't a better role model for young people the hero who's supportive of his wife and wife is supportive of him? A story never moving forward isn't good. The comment from Nick Lowe, "We end where we began," shows the problem. Everyone is staying the same, and regressing Mary Jane is the way to make sure Peter stays the same. People who get into comics can become lifelong fans. People can read them for decades, and do you know what they do? Introduce their children to them. I think they're somehow stuck in their head that if you don't read comics as a child, you will never start liking them, which is untrue. I started reading at 17 as a girl, which I think is quite late for the audience they're targeting with these runs. I read New X-Men and Nonocenti's Daredevil run, the Straczynski Spider-Man run, definitely more in line for what a 17-year-old would read. Yet I feel like these runs would not exist anymore. The stories are being increasingly sanitized for a new, more conservative audience and culture. Mary Jane and her parting ways don't fit into that. Gwen Stacy does, and Felicia, who knows her place as a girl to have fun with, does. Now, I will say not all Felicia fans are like this. I know I moaned about the subreddit, but some truly like their dynamic and how much she cares for Peter. It was lovely when he gave her memory back, but no one ever longs for the return of Carly Cooper as a love interest, because she's not enough of a blank slate. Heck, they don't even advocate for Jill Stacy, but then again, they may have had to have read the comics to know who she is. Heck, Wolfman is the only writer I've seen that has been a fan of Betty Brant, which is the reason why he broke up Mary Jane and Peter. So after 60 years, the roller coaster has gone off the track. I think the standards and expectations people have around women have had an influence on this. The rise of trad wives and podcast bros, I think has had a massive impact on how the comic books are now and how Mary Jane is treated. Who knows where we'll be in another 10, 20 years. Maybe in the 1000th issue they'll get back together. I doubt it, but let's see what road culture takes us down. And as I finish this, I am going to show you the corrected meme of what Comics Explained posted. This man has 2.6 million followers. I cannot even read the comic books he's explaining. Please, Lord, help me. Ugh. So that's my video on Mary Jane. It was long. I cut out a lot because it's 60 years. So if I'm missing stuff, I do apologise. I'm moving to comic book content because that's what I like. So ignore my first few videos. I won't be doing anything like that again. I also will have a video about Talia al Ghul, Daredevil, and I think Fables in the works. So yeah, if you like it, like and subscribe. And I'm leaving you with these two panels of Mary Jane realising that Peter didn't get his life together when they were together. And it's actually really sad because she's jealous of Carly Cooper. And yeah, it's really sad. But have a look.